Law enforcement is no longer allowed to wear masks in the state of California. But will ICE comply? Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is The Breakdown. Governor Gavin Newsom just signed a bill that implemented some of the nation's strongest laws to protect people from the tactics that have been employed by this current presidential administration. So this legislative package got signed into law, and it has several expectations that the governor and the legislature of California hope will keep people safe. So some of those things include that families should be notified when immigration enforcement comes on school campuses, and establish that student information in classrooms are protected from ICE, and require a judicial warrant or a court order to be accessed. So pausing there for a second. ICE often shows up with an administrative warrant. An administrative warrant is very different than a judicial warrant. It doesn't give the same amount of powers for them to be able to kick in doors and just grab anyone and disappear. They're using it like they can. But a judicial warrant has more power than an administrative warrant. That's why the legislature had deemed that ICE needs a judicial warrant or a court order to be able to come on school campuses. So there's that. The second aspect of this package of bills includes emergency rooms and other non-public areas in a hospital are off limits to immigration enforcement without a judicial warrant or a court order. And it clarifies that immigration information collected by a healthcare provider is protected as medical information. It also includes that law and immigrant enforcement officers must be identifiable by name or badge number, and exceptions to that must be clearly established. Masks are not to be worn except when absolutely necessary. And lastly, impersonating a federal agent is a crime. So this is groundbreaking because no other state has passed laws like this. And it also sets up a showdown between the feds and the states. So in this particular instance, California has passed this batch of laws, but most importantly, that law enforcement officers can't be masked. So obviously, California Highway Patrol, LAPD, San Francisco Police Department, all the different bodies of law enforcement within the state of California, they already know they have to comply. However, the federal government is supposed to respect a state's laws when they come onto state land. So when you're operating in the state of Missouri, as the feds, even though there's two different systems in terms of the federal system and the state system, and they each have their powers and all of that, but the federal government is to show deference to a state's law. So if they're operating in Missouri, then they have to show deference to Missouri's laws. Same thing, you're in California, you have to show deference to California's laws. But will they? So one food for thought for this. A state cannot directly regulate the federal government, but that does not mean federal employees do not have to follow state rules unless doing so would significantly interfere with the performance of their duties. So, for instance, and this is an example given by Professor Ervin Chermerinsky, who's at at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. And he's a leading scholar when it comes to law enforcement and constitutional law and all of that. And so he gave the example of how on the job, federal employees have to stop at red lights. So you're a federal employee, you're working in the state of California for the federal government, but you still have to respect the laws of the state of California. So you got to respect the traffic laws and all of that. So the state of California now has a law saying law enforcement cannot wear masks while executing their duties, unless, it's part of the uniform or something like that. And of course, there's an exception for the masks in terms of for health, right? Your N95 mask, things like that. But you can't wear, the kind of the hood, the whole kind of jump out look that we've been seeing in recent months. And another thing to note, even though this law is unprecedented, the reason is it just wasn't needed before. So ICE agents have been doing immigration enforcement for years. There hasn't been the need for them to wear masks to do that work. That's only come about since January. So what's shifted so massively in their work that all of a sudden they need masks? Because if you're following a legal order, I mean, people were deported under the Biden administration. People were deported under the Obama administration. People were deported under this president's first administration. And all those times, ICE agents didn't feel the need to wear masks. So what's changed? And they've been able to successfully execute their duties as ICE agents without wearing a mask in the past. And officers of local, state, and federal law enforcement faced all kinds of dangers in the public. I mean, think about civil unrest around protests. We see a lot happening now in terms of free speech and all of that. They faced these dangers before, but they didn't need to wear masks to deal with this danger. So again, what has changed? So now this is definitely being set up for a showdown between the feds and the state. So I easily see a scenario where ICE chooses not to comply with this order and wears masks and shows up to schools and does all the things that this new law laid out is not legal, is illegal. They're going to go do the exact opposite. They're going to do everything that's wrong and basically be like, all right, California, we dare you to do something about it. So what will likely happen? There will be a lawsuit. And it could land in front of the Supreme Court. And what's going to happen then? I have questions. But one step at a time. Right now, California has passed this law. Let's see if ICE complies, and we go step by step from there. And I will keep you posted with all the details. Be sure to subscribe to Legal AF, where you can get all the updates on all the drama coming out of this current presidential administration. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this was The Breakdown. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.